Hey gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is part 8 in the Cobra Jet series. Now, in the previous video I was showing you some repair work that I had done on the shock tower. I also did some removal of the shock towers from the pre-built frame rails that we had. And people asked me, why did we do this? Well, we didn't know what condition these pieces were going to be whenever we took everything apart. So we were kind of proactive in getting the complete setup. That way, if we needed those pieces, we already had them on hand. In this case, we're going to focus on saving those shock towers. So again, in the previous video, which this is a continuation of that video, we welded up the plug, or I welded up the hole in the side of the shock tower, and this is going to continue on that process. I'm going to show you how I do sheet metal repair work by using some panels that I salvaged from those frame rails. The rear apron, I used part of the top section, and then I also patched up the bottom area as well. So it is detail work, and a lot of it is kind of time consuming. You know, when you're doing this sort of thing, you have to be willing to put in the time. And you can't just, I don't take shortcuts, and I don't encourage anybody to take shortcuts when you do these sort of things. So that'll be this video. Hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. So with the other piece of metal laid in there and welded, everything blended down, that's good and solid. That's not going anywhere. And then, yeah, this one is okay. I know the other one, I think they started to cut it out on the other shock tower. So other than that, I'll have to do some welding up here and smooth up these corroded areas. So these are all the areas where it had pitting. Some scratches. Might as well blend them all. Probably gonna need to touch up still a few spots that I missed, but that's okay. Part of the process. So here's where we're at. Of course, I welded up that hole that was there and put another piece on the inside. I'll show you that in a second. I did weld up all the little craters that were in this area and blended those down. There was a few areas here that I took care of as well. And then I went around and welded stuff like any kind of holes that went through and filled in some of these over here and sanded those down. Did a little hammer and dolly work to straighten out some things. And now I need to address this rear panel. Again, the intent is to try to keep as much of this as we can. However, this bottom edge is no good. So I'm gonna have to rework that. And this top edge. You know, this was rusted. I did cut this off so that when they blasted it, they could clean it up. So I'm gonna have to come into this area a little more. I'd like to keep this edge if I can, but I don't know where I'm at with that right at the moment. The other side, there's where I had put in that plate, welded that and blended it. And also any spots or hot spots where I'd welded the craters, just kind of made sure those were all smooth. Down here, everything has been straightened. Everything's ready to go in this section. But again, I need to work on this panel. So, as everybody knows, I have this panel. Now, if you look at these two panels, it's a close representation. Let's be honest. This has a defined kind of Y shape to it. Trying to add some strength to that. There's another section back here. This area, not as impressive. You know, this is a weak stamping in my opinion. This is just kind of a push in, whereas this is kind of has a almost like a, I don't know, a pill shape, where it's got a defined kind of like a half of a curve, where this is just kind of meh, but pushed it in. This section here is again kind of pushed in, whereas this has nice crisp lines on the side. You can definitely see there was more effort in this one than in this reproduction. So this is a sacrifice. What I'm going to do is cut off this lower flange here. I'm not going to use anything in this section, and I just want to keep this flange because I've got a good straight edge, and of course this one is busted or, you know, broken apart from separation. This piece, even though I don't have much option, I'm not as happy with the stamping here, but I don't have anything I can do about it. So I'm gonna cut off this upper section and rework it over this into this piece as well. So in order to do this, I'm just gonna have to cut this off, and then I will do an overlap and recut both of these. I'm going to try to keep as much of this edge here as I can and just work kind of this back section and rebuild that. So what I'll end up doing here is just cutting off a big chunk of this so that I can fit it on top of that piece and then recut it. Also point out that this one has the holes in it for what would have been the original AC setup, whereas that one, because it wasn't an AC car, doesn't have those. I know, I cut that all choppy, and I did it on purpose. Trying to save as much of this section as I can, as I'm going to have to come down into this area. I couldn't go below that bolt, so that's what I have to do. Now this becomes patch panel. So if I use that as a reference point, you know, because this angle comes back here, and this edge, that's all I really need. So I'm going to make this a little bit shorter. I say shorter, I'm making this piece longer than what I'm going to need. You know, I talk about this in other videos that I've done. You know, I call it whittling. Because in effect, it's like you're whittling a piece of wood, but you're doing it with steel. So what I want to do, I'm just going to make this come down just a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit, because when I cut this, you lose material, right? So I'm going to just try to make up for the width of that blade a little. In effect, I'm making this longer than it would be to match directly. And then I'm gonna move this one. So that's my cut line. Gotta reset. These vice grips are in the way. Okay. Now that is basically the same piece. Now what I'll do is I'll take my sander, this little corner is what always gets you too. So there it is. I could probably bring it forward just a little bit based on this edge. That's actually pretty close. Okay, for this next part, I've already cut off that section that I wanted, and this is what I have to start with. So if you do a quick comparison on these, you've got a hole here that lines up, the bolt hole lines up, and of course the rest of it is just, you know, bad. Now, the difficulty with these is the lines usually aren't very crisp. So I've already kind of worked this edge a little bit to get a better corner here, because this is a pretty good line. So I use that, I use my little, I say little, I've got this heavy steel welding table, and basically I put it on that edge, used a hammer and kind of flattened that out to give a bit more crispness to it. Now I do want to do something similar with the other section here. It's not that critical. It's just a really cosmetic at this point. There's really no way, not any kind of press or anything that I'm going to have that will make that a cleaner line. And judging by that, you know, it's kind of, it is just tighter. So all I can really do is attempt to make that more rigid, or more crisp, I should say. And to do that, basically all I have is this block. But I can set this over and try. Now, the challenge, of course, is this block has this extra ear sticking off of it. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to even make it work exactly the way I want, but that'll help a little anyway. So I've got some dents up here on top. I'll take care of those. And then try to ride this against that, what's already there, and just kind of give it some help. You might notice when I'm striking this, I'm not just hitting straight down. I kind of hit at a bit of an angle. I don't know why. I just something I've learned to do over the years. In a way, I feel like I may be drawing the metal a little more in one direction or the other. So it's just kind of a habit I've developed. So you can see that is a better line now. It'll never be as crisp as what was on the other piece. Just nothing I can do about it. I don't know that I want to mess with this one too much. I could try to get a little bit out of it. Yeah, that does look better. It'll never be the same as factory. Just no way around that. But that is much better looking. Okay. Now the plan is to trim this to fit as well. And so I know this is going to be a problem here in this lower section. So what I can do is draw a line. Once again, hunt down the Sharpie. Kind of get it. Now if you notice too, I can point this out. This radius right here, that curve, that's where this is. So if I line that up with that, as if I'm going straight in, this lines up nice and clean on this back edge, but this one is slightly different. Not that critical, I'm just pointing that out. If I slide this back and try to line that up, this throws that off and that off. If I come forward and try to line up this hole with this little bit of an edge that I have, that throws everything else off. So I'm going to try to keep it more neutral, let's say with this line, this shape, and then this is secondary, because I'll probably end up trimming this off anyway, just to make it match the shape of the panel. Just some random information there. So I know I'm not going to be going down this far. I'm just kind of drawing this so I can see what I have. Okay. So with that, I can take, again, another piece of tape. And I'm going to try to stay above that, on this side anyway, stay above that cutout or recess for the bolt for the hinge, or the nut for the hinge. So I'll probably make a first cut above all that. Yeah. That's going to put me right on the edge of this rusted out area and eliminate everything else above that. Puts me right on the edge of that, but I don't have really much choice. I could go a little bit higher. Not much higher though. And then later on, because of that space, I'll have to fill that. I'll just have to save some of the this piece of metal, cut it a little bit bigger so that it fills that in. There we go. So I'm going to draw a line inside here. I have to consider a couple things. Okay, that's what I'm seeing. Before I get too far, I'm going to verify something. So I'm going to pick kind of a known point, let's say, like that. I take the bottom edge of that nut and see where this comes up and meets. I need that top edge to be also at 4 3/8. See that? So now I can say this line is a little bit off of where it should be. Actually, right there, it does line up. Okay. I was a little concerned because when I set this up here, I noticed this front section, if I pushed it flat against this, it raised this back section up. But it's really supposed to be down. Because, you know, most of the stuff just doesn't line up as it should, let's say. But we all know that. Now there I got a mark. And back here I need to leave this section alone. Okay. I'm not going to put the GoPro on for this because I'm going to probably have to, it's going to be a little bit tougher to cut. So I'll show you what it looks like once I cut it off. While I'm looking at this and I recognize that I'm confident with where I want my lines to be, I do have some doubts. Because this can move. Like you would think this plane here and this plane would be the same. And the result of that could be that I don't have this on the right curve. Because believe it or not, the fenders, that piece actually has a curve to it. So I don't want to take that chance on having that flat, even though I already have it designed, or my plan is to bring this down slightly and have that curve. So, as I always say, test fit, test fit, test fit. So here's what I'm going to do. At least on one side here, I'm going to fit in the shock tower. I'll probably put in both just because. Just get them in place, clamp them up, make sure they're sitting correctly. I'll put the aprons on, get those, because I already have the rear apron on that one anyway. Get those in position, mock up the export brace, and try to have everything lined up and make sure that that is on the right plane. I can set the fender up there and know that curve is correct. If I need to make some adjustments, then I can do it. I would rather go through these steps and make sure that things line up than to weld that thing together and it comes back to haunt me later. Know what I'm saying? So, I'm gonna put this in place. Ta-da. Put a clamp on there just to make sure it doesn't move, at least short term. Ah, it's hiding over here. I need to throw these away. I'm so sick of this Pittsburgh brand. Just because they just don't work well. There we go. Okay, there's that. Because I have to take that clamp loose. Now this case I have where the old welds were as a reference point. Whether it stays there yet, I don't know. Because you can see how far this sticks out. And I haven't smoothed this up yet. Probably should do some of that. Bremen, much better brand. So if you're going to Harbor Freight, spend the money on the Bremens. Now I'm just kind of getting this roughly in place, because these holes are more important than anything else at this point. Yeah, those are going to line up. Okay, now the only problem I'm going to have with putting the export brace on, and I'll have to just probably take care of these, is the bolts that go in there, the normal bolts, they slide in real easy. These will fit, but you can see it's just it's tight. So I need to grind down the top head of these to make clearance for them to fit. You can see what I'm saying. So let me take care of that, and then we'll get back to putting things in place. Okay, I have ground down these, make sure they have enough clearance to move around, and they do. So what I want to do is kind of get the firewall sitting where it should be roughly. I know it's not obviously going to sit underneath like it should. Again, this is all just to mock up pieces. Okay. Huh. Imagine that. Now, what I can do, I know I can't leave this in here. Don't really have much that I can do to keep that because I have to get the fender up here. But at this point, right now, you know, everything's kind of where it should be. A little turtle friend. Okay, so now that lets me assess this a little bit better. Okay, now I can show you. Hopefully you can see that. The fender actually is on a curve. We always tend to think of things as being straight or flat, but in this case, it's actually not. So if I take this, kind of position it. Voila. Now I can see what I need to do because I want that to continue on that plane. Now again, none of this is going to be perfect. We've got aftermarket this and original that, but now you can see better how that needs to line up. That works out to be the same. If I need to make some other adjustments, I can. Right now, this is overlapping the original piece just a little, but I can definitely make adjustments. So I see it's kind of touching there. This could come down just a little. Yeah, that's gonna work. Okay, so let me do some adjusting. I don't know that I like how this is sticking out right here right now, but this is kind of pivoting on this bolt. Again, this is just sitting here. I'm only using what I have, like these bolts, to hold it. So I want to make sure this, if I need to be able to move this around, I can. But yeah, right now it's trying to pivot on that bolt. So I need to adjust that. So here's where I'm at. I have trimmed that down and I've made the back edge and the front edge, those are the same length. I ended up trimming off a little bit off of that to make it line up. And then I also adjusted there is no overlap. This will be a butt weld going back in. I'm not ready to put it on just yet. I want to treat the metal that's underneath where this is going to overlap. So I'll probably use some phosphoric acid or something and treat that, and then get some primer on it. So if you'll notice here at the front, there's a little bit of a gap where the original piece comes up and overlaps the shock tower. I'm not going to try to bend that over and make it look odd. I'd rather have a bit of a corner there, and they would frequently put seam sealer in those spaces. So I did trim the corner, and what I mean is I cut the actual corner piece there and push that lower piece in a little bit and then ground the edge back, and then I'll re-weld that, and that'll be a solid piece again. It's going to look good when I'm done. I really like the way this is fitting at the moment, but I need to take care of the rusted area or the metal that's underneath and get it ready, and then weld this on afterwards. Just to show you what I'm doing with this, I have some Loctite rust dissolver, naval jelly, and basically you brush this on, and you can see it's actually turning color already on that part. But what it does is it dissolves the rust. You wait 5 or 10 minutes, you rinse with fresh water, and then it tells you on the can to apply primer and paint on top of that after it's all dry within 24 hours. So that's likely what I'll end up doing with these areas, and then continue on with the welding process. Alright, I have everything treated, and I actually sprayed this with self-etching primer. Now, a lot of people will say use weld-through primer. I have used weld-through primer before. I don't like the results. I've seen it cause problems with welding, and my thought is if you're using weld-through primer, you're just burning it out anyway. You're not doing anything. So I put self-etch on the back side of this panel, the top of this panel of course, and I've bared the contact areas. So when this is sitting on here, those contact areas are exposed and everything will weld as it's supposed to. So I'm going to get this set up and welded. What I want to do at this point, normally I use the MP200 Yes Welder, but for the lighter stuff, because I have smaller diameter wire already set up in this MIG, I will hook this up, this MIG 205DS, and weld it with that. So both these will do the job, but I don't want to swap out the wire. Too much work. It's a lot easier just to swap the gas bottle actually. together, and this side, this part is good to go. So I did weld in between all those spaces to build that in, and then down here I started tacking in this repair strip. So all I do on this is I start at a location, maybe this corner, and then put in a tack maybe here, come a couple inches, 2-3 inches, 2-3 inches, so on, and then I come back and I go in between those so that I can make a solid row. Now I'll finish welding this in and then blend things down and get a look at it. So I've welded the edge of this, and I've welded the edge of this, and of course up here, and these plug welds up on top. So I want to grind these down or sand these down. So I'm going to go back to using the Bauer 4.5 inch grinder. I've got a used 120 sanding disc for now, and let's knock some of this down. So you can see there's little gaps. So I put a light behind that. Those light up. So those are just areas I'm going to have to re-weld and continue to grind it down and smooth it out. Now some of this can be a little bit tricky because I've got a transition going here. This has a kind of a deflection, like it comes back and then rises up. So I'll use a smaller 90-degree grinder to get some of that taken care of. Okay, I think you get the idea. So there's still a couple little spots that I need to weld, so I'll come back and weld those. Grind this down again, taking my time with this. Don't want to create any low spots. Same thing over here, a few welds I need to touch up, and then use that to smooth it out. So let me take care of that, and then we'll get another look at it when I'm done. Okay. Oh. Okay, at this point I have come back, did the blend and added more weld, a couple little spots. So just need to knock that down, and we're just about done with this part anyway. These are available on Amazon. These are corrosion wheels typically used in the aircraft industry, but they're really good at stripping off paint and minor corrosion and stuff like that. So available on Amazon from 3M. Now, one other thing you can do when you're doing this, if you find a little distortion from the welding, this one's pretty flat, but you can take a block and just work it flat. So you have that, and then if you want to, it's not really necessary. If you get good weld, you can weld the back edge and reblend that, but this is actually in good shape. Same thing up here, all this is welded good. So yep, there you go. All right, so I've made some progress. This stuff all takes time, and people have said before that I have bucket loads of patience, and that's really what it takes whenever you want to do this kind of work. It's easy to take the shortcuts. It's easy to take a replacement panel and just make it fit, kind of massage it into place. It's difficult to try to save individual pieces or parts of a car like this, and that's the goal. We're trying to save what we can. So I've demonstrated how to cut out sections of metal, make a filler piece, weld that back together, blending, welding in the corrosion that was the pitting on the tower, and I think it's all turning out really nice. But I have to stop at this point. The video, this could be hours and hours long, and I just can't do that. I have to get stuff edited and get it, out to you so you can see what's going on. So there will be more to come, obviously. I still have to remedy the driver's side shock tower, take care of it, any kind of patching and welding and stuff like that has to happen. And I'm hoping in the next video section that I will be doing more of the test fit mock-up, and I may even, we'll see how it goes, I may even look at how the cowl is going to interact. Again, I stress this, test fit, test fit, test fit. It would be easy to just, hey, that looks close, weld it in, and then later on you're suffering because you can't work it, or you can't, you have to cut stuff apart and start over. I try to encourage you to not do that. Take your time and make sure everything lines up and fits. Don't get so focused on measurements that they hinder what you're doing. As you saw, I took the fender and I put it on the car. I'm using that as a reference in multiple, like say, zones, length, curvature, all those different things. So don't be afraid to do that sort of stuff to make sure you got it where you need it. But that'll be it for this video. I want to thank my patrons who support me. It's fantastic to have them on my team, and it encourages me to keep moving forward and make these videos. Also, if you would, leave a thumbs up and a comment. Let me know what you think about this, and that'll be it. So until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.